MLB free agency is here, and so many teams are looking for that next big star to sign this offseason. But at the same time, it's very important to avoid that next disaster contract that might be lurking around the corner. So I want to tell you about 5 overrated free agents that could be signed this winter and could wind up being bad buys for whichever team they go to. Most of the players I have on my list are very big name free agents, guys who are expected to be signed at the top of the free agent board for big money and many years. And one quick note, just because a player is on this list doesn't mean I don't like them as a player. In fact, I like some of these players a lot, but when I look at the contract it seems like these guys are going to get, it would make me very nervous if I was the team that was signing them. If you guys are not already, please subscribe to the channel down below. Also, don't forget to drop this video a like and let me know in the comments who some of your favorite or least favorite free agent targets are this season. But we're starting off with probably my least favorite free agent on the entire board this offseason. It's Ranger Suarez, starting pitcher from the Phillies. And when I'm saying this, there are a lot of things I think Ranger Suarez does really well. He has elite command. He has a deep repertoire. He doesn't walk any hitters. He works the edges really well. He avoids hard contact. Great things. I love that from Ranger Suarez. But I'm going to read you guys off a list of pitchers right now, and I want you to tell me what this group has in common. Eduardo Rodriguez, Brandon Walter, Sean Manaea, Joey Cantillo, Eric Lauer, Kyle Freeland, Patrick Corbin, Ranger Suarez, Logan Allen, Colton Gordon, Tyler Alexander, Jacob Lopez, Shota Imanaga, Jeffrey Springs, Ian Seymour, Tyler Gilbert, Jose Quintana, Kobe Allard, Andrew Heaney, Martin Perez, Austin Gomber, Tyler Anderson, Clayton Kershaw, and Ryan Yarbrough. I'll give you guys a quick sec. What does that entire group of pitchers have in common? That's every left-handed starter in the league with an average four-seam fastball velocity under 92 miles per hour. You heard almost all those names, you must have been like, wow, these guys are not very good. Then you heard Ranger Suarez's name thrown in right there in the middle. Very hard to be a long-term, effective starter in this league, especially past 30 years old, with bottom-tier velocity. Now here's the list for every left-handed starter with a sinker under 91 miles per hour. Ian Seymour, Tyler Alexander, Jose Quintana, Kobe Allard, JP Sears, Jacob Lopez, Ranger Suarez, Tyler Gilbert, Martin Perez, Clayton Kershaw, Andrew Heaney, Logan Allen, Tyler Anderson, Shota Imanaga, and Ryan Yarbrough. A lot of similar pitchers there, some new ones added to the mix, but still, a whole lot of not so good starting pitchers besides really Shota and Ranger. And then just to double down on this, to give you guys the league-wide stats on fastballs against left-handed pitchers that are under 92 miles per hour, it's a 278, 358, 512 triple slash line with a 372 expected WOBA and an 870 OPS. In terms of hitters from last season, when a lefty throws a fastball slower than 92 miles per hour, that's basically like facing Pete Alonso or Freddie Freeman every single time that pitch is thrown. Even if we just push up that average fastball velocity between 92 and 93 miles per hour, that OPS falls to 770, and that's over an 11,000 pitch sample. The velocity difference isn't as pronounced for sinkers because sinkers aren't going to be swung and missed at as often as fastballs, at least hopefully not. A lot more ground balls, a lot more weak contact involved in sinkers. And that does help Ranger Suarez because he's much more sinker dominant than fastball reliant. But even still, this is a terrifying place for a pitcher to start when you might be handing them a 4, a 5, possibly a 6-year contract. And again, tons of things can keep Ranger Suarez good despite having some of the worst velocity in the league. Things like I said at the top, his command, the depth of his repertoire, the development of his cutter. But I have a pit in my stomach even trying to wrap my head around even a 4-year deal for a guy that's already starting at 90 miles per hour, who's already 30 years old, who's never thrown 160 innings in a season, and who's not missing bats at an elite rate. It just, I can't stomach any kind of long-term contract for Ranger Suarez, and I really wouldn't want my team to sign one. Next up might be a very controversial pick, but it's Bo Bichette from the Toronto Blue Jays. And there are some things I really like about Bo Bichette as he enters free agency. First up, he's hitting free agency at 27, and he'll only be 28 on opening day. It's very rare to hit the market that young, and that's cool for Bo. Also, his bat-to-ball ability is truthfully one of the best in the league. But this to me is still a very, very ugly profile for a potential long-term deal. One of the biggest red flags is that his athleticism is going in the wrong direction very quickly. His average sprint speed fell to 26.1 feet per second this past season. That was the same as Yordan Alvarez and Paul Goldschmidt. These guys are either much bigger than Bo Bichette or much older than Bo Bichette. And some of the reason for Bo's slowness this past season was a knee issue. He tweaked it over the summer, then he missed almost the whole month of September, and then when he came back for the World Series for the Blue Jays, he really couldn't move. He was just up there to hit. So we can excuse some of that slowness this past season, but at the same time, Bo has already dealt with knee, calf, and quad injuries in his past. And again, only 27 years old, lots of lower body issues cropping up. And even with that very viable excuse built in for the slow sprint speed this season, he hasn't been a plus runner since his early 20s. That's a very strange aging curve for, again, a guy just entering his late 20s right now, and something that's a big red flag for me. On top of that, Bo is just straight up a horrible fielder. He's graded out as one of the worst shortstops in baseball over the last few years, and there's a lot of reports that teams are more so viewing him as either a second baseman or a third baseman this offseason. I actually do like that for Bo Bichette because I think in the near term, he can hit enough to be a successful third baseman. He can definitely hit enough to be a successful second baseman, but it's another weird red flag for Bo, as good shortstops are very hard to come by in Major League Baseball. He's played shortstop basically his entire career until the World Series just now, and teams still do not think he's a viable option there. The biggest thing, though, that has me scared about Bo's profiles as he seeks a long-term contract is that stylistically, the way that he hits is probably not going to age very well. He's on the record saying that his favorite stat is batting average. He's also shown in his career that he goes after a high batting average, something he chases, and he does that successfully. Bo has the 5th highest batting average among all active players at 294, and again, he has great barrel control. Look at this beautiful spray chart here from Bo Bichette. He just laces singles, doubles all over the place, works the opposite field really well. Love that. Great thing to have on a baseball team. But this style of an opposite field approach from Bo Bichette, it will not lend itself to much power, and when the athleticism does dry up and he's not as good at getting that barrel on the ball incessantly like he does now, he's not as good at hitting bad balls hard, something he does very well now, hitting balls on the edges, hitting balls slightly out of the strike zone, finding the barrel on them, hitting a line drive on them. Again, that's the skill set that Bo has. It will not age well. And now you have a guy who can't play the field very well, is getting slow very quickly, never takes his walks, doesn't hit for power. Those are the kind of things you want a player to lean on into a long-term deal. Bo doesn't have any of them. If you out there were telling me you could get Bo Bichette for like 3 for 90 right now, 3 for 80, I think I'd sign up for that in a second. But there's reports that Bo could be seeking a 7-8 year deal with the value pushing $200 million. The second half of that might be an utter disaster, and I am staying far away from Bo Bichette on that long of a contract. Next up might be a very controversial call, but I'm happy to stand up on this take. I don't really love Tatsuya Imai coming over from the Cebu Lions of the NPB. Imai has kind of become the darling of the starting pitcher market this offseason because there's definitely something to be scared about of every single guy out there, and on top of that, Imai doesn't come with a qualifying offer, so a team's not going to have to lose an asset to sign him. It's just money. And him being on this list doesn't mean I don't like him. I just don't love him. And I think the way this offseason has begun, the way some people are falling in love with Imai, he could stretch close to the 7 years, $210 million that Dylan Cease just got. Similarly, I wouldn't like Framber Valdez at that price either. I don't like him anywhere near that price, but I don't think that his market right now is even as hot as Imai's is. So I'm going to break him down right now and let you guys know why. He's been one of the top pitchers in the NPB for the last few seasons. You guys see the stats up top. This guy was an animal last year. He has 4 straight seasons of an ERA under 2.5. His walk rate has also fallen 6 straight seasons to a very, very good 7% when it was kind of worrisome in the mid-teens earlier in his career. At the same time, his strikeout rate has risen in 6 straight seasons, peaking just this last year at 27.8%. However, in that platform year, his strikeout minus walk rate is more similar to guys like Kenta Maeda and Yusei Kikuchi than someone like Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And the way this contract is going right now, it will be a little bit more similar to Yamamoto's for Imai rather than Maeda and Kikuchi, where those guys might actually be the skill comps for him, and let me explain why I think that. Imai's profile flashes some seriously plus stuff, and that's being led right now by a fastball that averaged 95 miles an hour last year in the NPB and peaked around 100. You guys can see right here from this velocity gradient provided by the Yaku Cosmopolitan that Imai more often than not sat seemingly lower than where he had to, and would kind of dial up that 96, 97 when he had to get guys out, work out of jams. But with that, Imai was a workhorse last year in the NPB. He had 5 complete games and 3 shutouts. So again, it seems like he was purposefully hanging out, leaving something in the tank, and using that heavy fastball when he needed it. When he comes to the major leagues, I think he's going to push that fastball up because we don't really let guys hang out back much. It's grip it and rip it. I think he's going to be sitting more like 96-ish rather than 95 where he sat in the NPB. And with that, it's really cool for Imai because he has some great fastball traits and characteristics. He releases the ball from a very low slot and a very flat approach angle. That's similar to a guy like Joe Ryan. We love those fastball traits because they're really good for inducing swings and misses. Very difficult for a hitter to pick up. In fact, there's a great chart that was made by Eno Saris of The Athletic in his article linked below talking about how much he loves Imai coming over this year. And you can see that Imai's induced vertical break, estimated release angle are basically the exact same as Joe Ryan, which is a great thing. But even with having those great fastball pitch specs, the pitcher only had about a 20% whiff rate in the NPB last year. Again, that's not a league that strikes out very much, not a league of swings and misses very much. Also, a league with a dead ball, so you're not as afraid to let them put that ball in play. But truthfully, I'm very curious about how the shape of this fastball comes to be in Major League Baseball, mostly because we use a different ball here than they use in the NPB. Their ball is a little bit smaller, a little bit tackier, so it's easier to get a grip on, and it has higher seams. So when you throw a fastball in Japan, it's naturally going to have more ride on it and more run on it. Also, Imai pitched in a dome last year with the Cebu Lions, so he was pitching most of his starts in a very controlled setting. So it was very fair for us to expect some kind of significant regression on this, what's supposed to be a plus-plus fastball shape from Imai when he comes over. I have a great thread here from Chris Langan, who's the former director of pitching at Driveline, a great Twitter follow to you guys, showing that pitchers on average lose 1.7 inches of induced vertical break, 128 RPMs, and 3.8 inches of arm side run in general on their fastballs coming to America. In Japan last year, as I showed you guys before, Imai averaged 13.5 inches of induced vertical break and 14.7 inches of arm side run. So realistically, when he's coming over next year, we should be expecting something more like between 11.5 and 12 inches of induced vertical break with about 11 inches of arm side run from, again, what should be a very elite 20-degree release angle. And that kind of pushes us in two different directions and how we're going to interpret Imai's fastball now coming over. Because when you look at the list of pitchers who have about 11.5, 12 inches of induced vertical break, it's not an inspiring list. Like, look at these fastballs. Jason Alexander, Carlos Carrasco, Zach Eflin, Antonio Sensatella, Paul Skeens, of course, but the average is 99. We'd think that Imai's going to sit 96. Emerson Hancock, Kumar Rocker. This is not a list you want to be on in terms purely of movement. But movement is kind of irrelevant when we don't consider where a pitcher's releasing the ball from. And again, I said before, that 20-degree release angle that we're estimating from Imai is super elite. When you look right here at every single release angle for every pitcher in the league, there's a big congregation between 30 and 50 degrees. That's where most pitchers are releasing. But when you look down here around 20 degrees, it becomes much more rare. The fact that hitters don't see that release angle as often, again, makes the fastball much more difficult to pick up. So now, if we look at the list of pitchers with, again, around 12, 11.5 inches of IVB, and taking into account that release angle, you do get a more favorable list. A guy like Brandon Walter, who does miss bats despite not even having good velocity. Lance McCullers, don't want to talk about him. Luis Ortiz's fastball represents a really good comp because it has the arm side run on it too. I know Luis Ortiz is a dirty name in baseball right now, but his fastball did miss a good amount of bats and didn't give up a ton of damage. But at the same time, Ortiz mostly threw cutters and sinkers. The fastball is kind of something he played off of those. Jacob Lopez is a guy that found a lot of success with a good fastball shape in a tough pitcher's park, even without elite velocity. So there is a really good pathway through for Imai, despite the fact that the fastball probably loses a lot of what should be a plus shape. And even just considering this right now, I went to Baseball Savant and took every single fastball thrown this past season between 95 and 97 miles per hour with an arm angle between 18 and 22 degrees and with an IVB between 11 and 13 inches. And the league-wide stats on those pitches was a 288 xWOBA, 25% whiff rate. That right there, if Imai can stay there with that fastball, I think he's still definitely a plus pitcher. Because even if you just take all of these pitch specs out of it and you just do fastballs between 95 and 97 miles per hour, that whiff rate goes down a little bit. The expected WOBA goes up a lot. Much better quality of contact when you don't set up that arm angle anymore. So again, Imai's arm angle is very, very important here and could still keep this pitch plus, but maybe not as plus as some of the pundits believe it to be. Now, getting past Imai's fastball, his slider is very, very weird. Not saying it's bad, but that's his out pitch, and it's very weird. It's a reverse slider. It has some screwball tendencies where it moves to Imai's arm side. Again, crazy how this pitch moves. And it acted like an elite pitch in the NPB. It had a 50% whiff rate against right-handed batters, sitting in the upper 80s. That's a true out pitch right there. And because this pitch, again, does have strange reverse movement, it should be relatively platoon neutral. He treated it as a relatively platoon neutral split in Japan last year. But there really aren't many sliders like this in Major League Baseball. Only 3 pitchers in the league last year threw a slider with at least at 1 inch of arm side movement, and that was Trey Savage, Chase Petty, and Dauri Moreta. Very wide range of outcomes of those 3 pitchers right there. So really not sure how top-end effective that pitch will be. That becomes especially worrisome to me because Imai's basically a 2-pitch guy. It's that fastball and that slider. At least he was in Japan. Versus right-handed batters, he threw 93% combined fastballs and sliders. And against left-handed batters, it was combined 71% fastballs and sliders. So if the fastball loses some life and the slider is no longer super-duper elite, how effective is he? Like, is this a 3.7, 3.8, 3.9 ERA guy? Is his strikeout rate going to be able to climb past 25%? Again, because you might be paying $200 million for his services. A lot of this will come down to the rest of the pitches in his repertoire. Ones he did not throw that much in Japan. A changeup that he liked to throw against lefties. A splitter that graded out as plus, despite, again, not really using it that much. He has a Vulcan, too, that some Japanese journalists have said acts more like a sinker as well. But funny enough, Earlier in Imai's career, he was using these pitches more often, but as he phased them out is when his walk rate improved drastically and got below 10%. I would be a little bit worried if he adds all those pitches back into his repertoire and that walk rate winds up climbing. That's kind of a whole nother can of worms here. So a lot of this future success for Imai to really cash in for a potential 6, 7, or 8-year deal with an AAV around $25, $28 million includes this weird slider, which again, I still think is a very good pitch, staying plus, plus, plus. I think that's probably the most likely outcome here because it's such a rarity in Major League Baseball. But also, it needs that fastball to at least stay plus. At least miss bats at the 25% clip and not become a pitch that hitters can tee off of and hit homers. And again, maybe the added velocity helps that. Maybe he does some training here to help that shape. But again, I think it's a bigger question mark than people are giving that credit for. And again, he probably has to find a way to meaningfully reintroduce that splitter to his repertoire because on a whiff basis, on a shape basis, that pitch looks elite. But he hasn't used it in a few years. So again, he has to just bring it back. To me, these are a few too many questions for what might have to be a $200 million commitment. Next up, we have Cody Bellinger. And this is just a buyer beware situation for a player who might be anticipating a 5 or 6 year contract. At least it might take that much to sign him. And we're hilariously only 3 years removed from Cody Bellinger being non-tendered by the Dodgers. And even the 3 seasons since then, while 2 were very good, 1 was aggressively average. So this is an incredibly inconsistent player at best that you have to be committing 5 or 6 years to as they turn 30 years old. Obviously, there's tons to like about Bellinger as a player. He makes tons of contact. He maximizes power really well with pulled fly balls. He's still a plus athlete. He's going to be a great defender in the corner outfield. He still has a great arm. He'll be an amazing first baseman too as that athleticism wanes toward the back end of a contract. But inconsistencies at the plate with a huge piece of his value driven by corner outfield defense for a long-term deal, that just kind of screams Jason Hayward to me, and that's really scaring me off. And we've seen some of these fears about Bellinger's profile as a hitter really actualized at times in the past few seasons. His damage rates and batted ball profile are basically the same 3 consecutive years in a row. And inside of those 3 seasons, we've seen a 50-point swing in ISO and 100% swing in his slugging percentage mixed in. That's a lot of variable production year to year that I don't want to be committing 5 or 6 years to. He did take a really big and very important step forward in his swing decisions last year, especially by becoming a lot more selective with pitches on the edge while being more aggressive at pitches in the heart. We love that. We love that a lot. But for some part of me, I can't really get away from the fact that most of last year he spent hitting either in front of or directly behind Aaron Judge, which I feel like was a big reason that you're going to get a lot more pitches to hit in the heart of the plate and not have to worry about the edges so much. He has closed his drastic platoon split, which is really good. He's a good lefty on lefty hitter at this point in his career. No fear about that. And truthfully, I'd really like him on a similar deal that he signed with the Cubs a few offseasons ago, 3 years for $80 million. But I think for some reason, maybe he's zooming past that. And for a guy that doesn't hit the ball very hard, can play plus defense in center field, doesn't have elite bat speed, and more just plays to his contact and has shown some inconsistencies over the last 5 seasons, I can't really fold on a 5-year deal. No shot. Last up is Eugenio Suarez, who just kind of has proven to be one of the most inconsistent players in the entire sport. Even just look at his first and second halves from last year as an example. In the first half, he's one of the best hitters in the whole show. He had nearly a 900 OPS, home runs left and right. Looked like he was going to be a guy moved at the trade deadline to totally transform the World Series race. Then he got traded to the Mariners. Wasn't even a plus hitter. 730 OPS. The home runs dried up a lot. It was total night and day for Eugenio Suarez last year. On top of that, the second half was so bad for Suarez that his on-base percentage dipped below 300 by the end of the season. Below 300, I don't even want to give a multi-year deal for a player that didn't have a 300 on-base percentage. That was a very similar mistake that Toronto Blue Jays made last season with Anthony Santander. I know the deal was very cheap for AAV, but I know right now the Blue Jays would love not to have that roster spot clogged up by Mr. Santander. On top of that, Suarez's defense graded awfully last year at third base, even though the last 2 graded very well in terms of outs above average, and he chased out of the zone more than he ever had before. Suarez still does make better swing decisions when he gets credit for, because he's so good at punishing pitches in the heart of the plate, but the swing and miss has always been very present. He's 34 years old. The second half last year was an abomination. Like, these are just lots of big blinking red lights telling me that I don't want to give Eugenio Suarez more than like a max 2-year deal. At the end of the day, I think he's really just a slightly above league average guy who you can count on for 35 homers, probably no good defense, probably not so good athleticism. Again, 2-year deal, that's all I want Eugenio Suarez for. But thank you guys so much for watching the video. Again, if you are not already, please go down there, subscribe to the channel, drop the video a like, let me know in my comments if you're screaming at me about Bo Bichette or Imai, tell me I'm an idiot, or if you like the takes, comment that as well. But thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time.